live or... Okay. So I just hit my go live button. There we go. So hopefully everybody can see the stream now. Let's just do a quick double check on the calendar. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, I have my stream software up. We should be up and running. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Nomadic Insights is up and running. Awesome. So let's get started with today's edition of Nomadic Insights. So we're going to be looking at the idea, does credit destroy wealth, or what's occurring when you use credit? I'm going to be taking a look at the work of Robert Kyosaki as well as Dave Ramsey. Both of these gentlemen present us with ideas I classify as ways to wealth or philosophies of wealth. Most people don't have a life philosophy. They don't have a way they really express what they're looking for. They don't really have any direction in life. And this leaves them searching for answers to basic problems. Hence why Ramsey presents us with essentially, that philosophical choice or that conversion choice you need to make, such as renouncing debt, destroying all of your credit cards. These are very religious, I would say pseudo-religious or pseudo-philosophical moments, the debt-free scream. These are really meant to make you have a conversion to set you on the way to wealth. Now, personally, I'm not that interested in having a philosophy that just makes me wealthy. That seems like a pretty empty, not very interesting life, to just be focused on the accumulation of material goods. You could look at that either way you want, but really, what kind of life does that leave you with if you're just solely focused on the accumulation of money? Again, not a very rich life here. So with that in mind, one of the main things I always explore on this channel is different points of view and different philosophies. Next week's edition, we're going to be going through the world of Sharia finance and looking at alternative ways of actually dealing with capital that don't involve interest payments, since there are some moral questions you may have about, is lending money moral? Is actually... I have not seen Spencer Cornelia's video on Robert Kyosaki. Robert Kyosaki is an interesting character, though, I'm saying. I mean, he's kind of turned into like this edge promoter of like financial scams. If I'm being honest, I just think that he is, one of those guys who is... I mean, we may actually pull up some of Spencer's content today in the stream. I just am a little skeptical because I got my first copyright claim from the segment I did on Dave Ramsey, which I totally think falls under the doctrine of fair use. That was really annoying. So on last week's version of the video I did on Dave Ramsey with the Dave Ramsey content, we got a copyright claim automatically, of course, not a direct copyright claim from the YouTube system. And definitely the commentary I'm doing falls under fair use when we're looking at and criticizing Dave Ramsey's ideas. But what generally ends up happening is, him saying, if you remember the, okay, I gotta do, I'm saying, okay, did I say that correctly now? I'm so bad. I am like the world's worst person when it comes to pronunciation sometimes. It's like, so instead of him, it's him. Okay, I'm going to remember this. And I am sorry, sir. I am very sorry. But with that in mind, you get into this world of like the crypto grifters where just kind of go with like the China YouTube guys who I've regularly criticized on previous iterations of this screen. I call them the green screen grifters. It's hard to not call them that just because it's this constant state of moral panic. You're looking for people to go crazy about, China's invading, this is happening, that's happening, so terrible. There's been a lot of video content lately on the pending collapse of China, which I've found pretty interesting. But again, once we go into, the realm of Robert Kiyosaki, he's really focused on perpetuating these financial scams or trying to part you from your dollars with promoting crypto, really doing a lot of things that are not going to help you build sustainable wealth. I do agree with Robert Kiyosaki on some certain points, such as, the best skills you can pick up as a young person are sales and marketing. Since I started a career in sales, I've tripled my income. So I highly recommend people look into sales and marketing if you're not in something like engineering, law, or medicine, since that's one of the best professions you can get into, especially if you're interested in owning a small business. Marketing and self-promotion, particularly prospecting, really drive a lot of your ability to generate wealth. I think Robert Kiyosaki is dead on with that. But, as I've been doing more research into David Ramsey has made his money by following a system set out by Michael Hyatt in the book Platform. In this book, Michael Hyatt goes through the ability that every person has today to effectively create a platform or to effectively build their own business through social media, whether that be blogging, whether that be TikTok or YouTube. You have the ability to create your own pulpit or to share a viewpoint. That's a very powerful thing. And that's how Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki have built their wealth. I was watching a video to prepare for this, a clip I'll be showing, where it's this girl who works at Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or on the Rich Dad channel, where she's talking about how she's had the opportunity to work somewhere and learn about debt. So the idea of working for someone else and learning about how you can get good debt while still working for someone seems a little paradoxical to me, as you look at this message of become an entrepreneur, become independent, grasp at your independence. So if that's the basic message, it gets really difficult to understand why you are working for these people. It just strikes me as a little, comical, let's be honest here. So with that in mind, when we're engaging with these philosophies or we're talking about the accumulation of wealth or money, I think it's very important to have a philosophy of wealth, or talking about the lifestyle that allows you to accumulate wealth. A lot of more wealthy people live very ascetic lives. So what Dave Ramsey is teaching you can lead to a very ascetic life. You're afraid to take vacations. You're not going on trips. You are just living a life without very much ability to enjoy yourself. So what I mean by this is, let's just suppose you have no debt, you haven't paid, you've never gone outside of the country, and you haven't paid for school. So I have friends who follow Dave Ramsey stuff, who are evangelicals, who have never been to Europe, never been outside the United States. And yes, they have $100,000 in their wallets, but they still live with their parents because they're still saving and saving and saving more money. I have not saved a ton of money, or as much as I would like, because I chose to make less money, become a digital freelancer, and go to Spain for 3 years. I also decided to make one of the stupidest financial purchases a 20-year-old can make, which is getting a big furry Spanish water dog named Leo, which many of you may remember from the channel. He just did a big flop. I'm sure y'all heard that on this very sensitive microphone. But I really enjoyed those experiences. And on the whole, I feel like I've lived an extremely balanced life. I don't talk a lot about my undergraduate fraternity experience where I was a member of Sigma Phi Epsilon. We have this program called the Balanced Man Program. And I think it's very important in everything you do to cultivate some degree of balance or to become a balanced person. So with my own philosophy on credit, I have a pretty balanced view of I avoid consumer debt, I avoid a lot of consumer leverage, but I will run the numbers on how is it cheaper to do something. If it's cheaper to finance a car because of a finance offer, I'll do that. It makes a lot of financial sense sometimes to use leverage or to use debt. That's just one of those things we want to bear in mind. If something makes more sense financially, you've done the research and you've done the numbers, or in some cases where you're looking at actually, saving a lot of money, before you do something, sometimes it's just quicker to get the leverage up, get the loan, and make the business purchase. Like, for example, I want to buy a coffee roaster. Right now I'm sitting on the cash, but if I could just get it at 0% interest for 2 years, I'd probably do that right now versus being parted with like $3,000. You should always have the cash to do these things, but why would you be parted with the money? That's generally my view. Is I just prefer to have the cash in my pocket, and if I can get an interest-free installment to do something that I'm going to spend months and months and months and months brooding about anyway. I spent a good 3 years thinking about a car purchase, and I could have paid cash for my car, or I could have just bought it with 0% down, or I could have just bought it with financing, which was 0% interest, and also gave like $1,000 rebate, which was not available unless you took the financing offer. So in that particular circumstance, and when you're actually buying vehicles, it is a lot better sometimes to finance because you don't get this cash discount that Ramsey likes to promote. Now, I got a really economy class Hyundai, don't get me wrong. I mean, it is not this luxury Tesla vehicle. But what that enables you to do is you still have a pile of cash. Why wouldn't you keep that? So this idea that somehow debt has destroyed my ability to accumulate wealth, or it's been really bad for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So the Dave Ramsey approach of, hey, save money, I've got to save all my money and I got to pay cash for everything. Well, now meet your new friend, inflation, where if you delay the purchase, something could be 15, 20, or 100 times more expensive than it was today. So in that case, leverage begins to make a lot of sense when we're dealing with hyperinflation. So if you've spent any time in like Argentina, South Africa, or you've been in the developing world, it's very hard to take the ideas that Dave Ramsey promotes as utterly gospel because cash is not king. In a low inflation environment, cash is probably king, but when the value of cash is constantly changing, I remember when eggs were $1 a dozen about 2 years ago, now they're up 300%. That level of inflation, once it happens, completely turns the world on its head, and you need to be able to pivot. Dave Ramsey's system is a bit of an intellectual straitjacket in that it doesn't allow for these intellectual pivots, and it doesn't really allow you to make changes. Now, we're going to get into when is debt bad? When does it not make a lot of sense? You know, people start over leveraging, or they buy real estate properties, or they get started in real estate investing. And oh my, that would go so badly for me. That would just go so badly. So I was thinking about buying a multifamily home. I was thinking about that before the pandemic as my big property purchase. And I went single family home because, yeah, my girlfriend was not about the let's have like 3 people living below us lifestyle. So I could live there by myself, and we could have stayed at her condo, and I would just be there chilling and having a good time for the year with my office and the dog. But you know, you have to sacrifice a lot of things in order to do that, like your privacy. So having 20 roommates in order to save like $300 a month, you know, slowly compounding your wealth with house hacking, yeah, like that could be intriguing, but it's a pain in the butt. I mean, you are really diving into something that is going to be a massive, bloody pain in the butt. It's the same thing where you have rentals. Like, I remember when my parents had a rental property, they rented out their condo. It was a nightmare. It was just so much easier to just sell it, because as a mom and pop landlord, unless you have a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio with like commercial units and multi-units, it's really not that effective. And you have to accept a basic truism of most things. People suck. The first rule of life is that people suck. Without a doubt, that is the ultimate truism. And whenever you listen to these landlord tenant stories, I'm just like, house hacking, no thank you. I would do it now that we own a property once this place is paid off, and if it could cash flow, put my office up on the top and do the couch surfing there for my primary residence. But I think that that would go very badly with what I like to affectionately refer to as the finance committee. I think I would be voted down very, 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 very quickly. So let's kind of get into, though, this idea of, you know, credit and good debt versus bad debt. I really don't like the idea of good debt versus bad debt. Whenever we label something good versus bad, it creates a connotation. We begin to judge things, and it doesn't really allow for detailed examination of what's going on. So, as in line with Skeptic Sunday, the idea of is debt good, is debt bad, is contextually determined. Exactly. I mean, it's very much, you know, I'm saying good comment. You know, I think a lot of Dave Ramsey's fan base is like success porn, where a lot of people call in, you know, they're doing very well. They have millions and millions of dollars. But if you're a person from a developing country trying to accumulate wealth, it's kind of like these people who are into crypto, where like the transaction costs make it so high that most people, like even people in developed countries, like my friends in Spain, can't afford to use crypto because of how damn expensive these transaction fees are. And it's just not really well managed. But again, Americans have a super privileged view of the world, where we've lived with a lot of stability. You could go into the ethics here. You know, does the US benefit still from modern day imperialism? Whole can of worms we're not going into today. But that privilege of the dollar really allows us to think that everything is stable and everything is, you know, pretty good. I mean, if you look at just like a, you know, like developed country that's become non-developed, I mean, just look at what's going on in South Africa right now with, I believe it was the Cape Town riots, where you see this really this modern nation state really implode, but it was never a system that worked for the vast majority of people. And this is one of those things where if you've some of my earlier content criticizing people who want the government of China to fall, it would look really bad, and it would look like something akin to what's going on in Venezuela or South Africa. And it's a really terrible situation, exactly in Turkey as well. These are really terrible situations to wish upon people, especially hyperinflation. It really does just take what people have built their entire lives and utterly destroys it. One of the reasons I advocate a nomadic life is, if life turns upside down somewhere, you need the ability to immigrate or just get the hell out. Trying to fight or change the system isn't really a worthwhile way to spend your life. If you're deeply unhappy somewhere, you should just leave. That's just my basic viewpoint is you need to get out. The time to get out of Turkey was on the wall with the Gulag incidents 3 or 4 years ago. It's actually nearly 5 years ago at this point. Wow, it's been a really long time. But that's really the advantage of living this global life or a more globalized life is you have the ability to beat feet. Personally, I like the state of Connecticut where I live now, and I don't have any desire to go anywhere else because we're the land of steady habits. It just doesn't really change very often. But, people leave places for reasons that aren't necessarily the best all the time, because I need more money, I need more wealth, I need mas, mas dinero, mas everything. And it's not really a way to live your life. That's the other thing with Dave Ramsey and Robert Kyosaki. A rich man or a wealthy man should realize when enough is enough or when it is, sufficient to stop accumulating wealth. And the need for expansion or ever growing or really empire building as a means of philosophy. I have a moral problem where it's like, if I write a book, should that book be given away for free because I think it adds value to people's lives? Should you charge for teaching? Should you charge for ideas? I have a problem with that because I think that ideas should be freely accessible and, open for the public square of debate. But again, most of what Dave Ramsey is teaching is grounded on this idea of financial stability, or almost like the world continues to have a gold standard, which no longer exists. Even the idea of cryptocurrency as an inflationary hedge, well, crypto has tanked simultaneous to a massive rise in inflation, so it doesn't appear to really have any inflationary preventing properties whatsoever. So as we dive into Robert Kiyosaki, we're going to get a view of, the sky is falling. The sky is bloody falling. The sky is always bloody falling with these guys. Whether it be Dave Ramsey trying to gin you up with fear or Robert Kyosaki. Apparently these guys are buddies or something, according to Dave on his stream. I'd be very sad when I run out of coffee. I'm trying to space out my latte today. But that is a story for another time. So with Robert, just got to pull on my own headsets and I got to juggle between here. So let's get rolling. Okay, so there I am. Perfect. So I think that this lady has some interesting points. I just want to play the start. Okay, I feel like we are entering the seminar sales funnel. Um, it that just like screamed to me, I am here to help you sell seminars, Robert Kiyosaki. let me have access to your seminars and the wealth that is generated from these amazing, amazing seminars. I'm going to replay because I noticed my volume was low. So let me just
idea or connotation towards debt. And that's because that's what we were taught in the school system and the traditional education system, that it's not so great. But because I work here and I have these resources and I've gone to your seminars,
good now.
I understand that debt can be powerful and it can be used in a good way and it could generate you money.
So for those listening, debt is a four-letter word for most people. There are many people in my position, so-called financial gurus, who say live totally debt-free. And there's other people who say, cut up your credit cards.
Okay, so obviously he is referring to Dave Ramsey here in this video, and cut up your credit cards and all of these other wonderful, wonderful things. So I think we need to enter in a new word here to these financial conversations and talk about what is a wise financial decision. So is it wise to avoid debt, or is it wise to, take on leverage in a going, for a going concern or for a business? So I also definitely do just want to reiterate, I feel like I'm getting already, into the sales funnel for more rich dad, poor dad products. It's also the same with Dave Ramsey, where it becomes more and more Dave Ramsey products. It is okay to, solve somebody's problem. They graduate and then they leave. This idea of recurrent revenue, with what is a very simple financial, idea, either go completely debt free or, use leverage in a strategic way. These are not necessarily like complicated ideas where you need to attend a very long seminar on them. I just don't really see why you need to fly somewhere to go to a seminar. Most of this information is publicly available, and frankly, it's fairly easy to access. If you're looking for a way to build wealth, probably you'd be better off with Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor, or becoming a bogglehead and investing in Vanguard funds, which most of these financial gurus are not interested in telling you. That's just my own personal thing. I have noticed engaging more and more with these different audiences. There's always something to be sold. There is always a course to attend and a book to buy. So there's that. I just feel like the grift. And this guy's got suits that are just like, they just scream like modern day dandy. If you're looking for an interesting video, I highly recommend the Congo Dandies video by Vice. Very fascinating, where like these guys dress in these incredibly ostentatious and fancy suits. And, just his thumbnail right here of you're worth nothing. What are we being sold here? You'll own nothing and be happy. While he's in one of his crazy suits. I do love Robert Kyosaki fashion choices. So just going forward a little bit more. So let's just skip ahead here.
I'm already practically done. And I can't pay back this debt, so she's stuck with the nursing career and she doesn't even like it.
When I was your age, like I think I said earlier, is that my classmates were making like $110,000, $120,000 a year, which is not much money. Mm-hmm. But for my generation, if I made $20,000, that was a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? It was just out of proportion. So we were the highest paid graduates in the world, and my starting pay was about $47,000 a year. My classmates were making 3 times as much as me, but it's a choice we make. I didn't really want to do what they did.
Yeah.
So I had to join a labor union. As ship's officers, we had to join the MMMP, Masters, Mates, and Pilots, which...
Okay, so just kind of going into this idea of, what should you pay? Why should you pay that? I mean, even if you're living a debt-free life, I just kind of think of my own experience in Spain where, your life can still suck. So in Spain, youth unemployment, even for doctors, was fairly high. So even if you become a teacher, which is in America, it's pretty easy to get a teaching job given the teacher shortage right now. Good luck doing that in Spain because you have to take an exam for the civil list and you've got to sit there. So they've gone to school for free, but they obtain no secure employment until they're like 38 in most cases. So how do you actually build a life when you have a basic employment non-security or you're basically permanently unemployed? So Europe in and of itself is pretty, like most people's lives are pretty debt free, except for when they get a mortgage or hipoteca. I just, my brain switches to Spanish when I start talking about Spain. Sorry. But again, people go to school debt free. People make some really economizing decisions, and those decisions don't necessarily pan out. They think they're going to enjoy these professions. They don't. And you end up in an environment where you're looking for this financial cure because the decisions you made weren't necessarily based on a lot of reflection and personal experience. Instead, they were based on, everybody does it, or hey, this is just what you do, of hey, go to college, without really being encouraged to think critically about what you're going to set out and do. Just even, broaching my own system feels really disingenuous to me because, like, I do have a system. My system is a little, my system is definitely my own little system that I've concocted over the years, but I can't treat that system as a definitive binding financial system where it's this path, and if you follow this path, you're going to get exactly the same outcomes I've had. I've had a lot of unique privileges and a lot of unique experiences that make it really hard to say, like, hey, this is going to be the definitive life path you're going to take, and it's going to work out extremely well for you. So that's where I draw a bit of issue with the financial guru, is just this idea you're going to have this life, it's going to proceed from point to point, and it's going to go extremely, extremely well. So let's just...
We're labor union guys. So labor union guys make more money. And nothing personal, but I don't want to be a union member. So I joined Standard Oil of California as a shipping officer, and then I didn't have to join the labor union. But I only got $47,000 a year. That was the difference. The difference is Standard Oil is still sailing, and a lot of those labor union jobs are gone.
So the thing is, like, Americans have, in general, a very unhealthy view of labor organization because, again, you have to be very mercenarial here. You got to sell out really fast. But again, for a lot of people, they're going to just be like a ship's mate. They're not going to sell, financial courses and products and build their, financial empire like Robert did. A lot of people in the military can do very well financially with some of the housing allowances. But again, what ends up happening is this path comes to dominate. Like people who join unions, they're suckers. That's a sucker. You're a sucker. And that's the basic tone exactly. I mean, even worse with a lot of his stuff is, you know, even with comparative advantages and all of this other stuff, you know, if you're going to have like a certain economy, like you need to protect it. Like China has had a lot of economic success through protectionism. India, for its own economic development, has engaged in, you know, certain industries have strategic protections, which makes a lot of sense. Like, I still don't understand why anybody thought it was a good idea to put all of Europe's oil at the mercy of Putin. Still trying to reconcile that one. But hey, that was a great geopolitical strategic move.
because the pay got too high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's always a good and bad, and it's hard to understand that when you're younger. But I knew when I was 22 years old, I didn't care if they paid me $100,000 a year. I wasn't going to join a union. It was just principle.
So it's just principle. Your father was in the union. Suckers and poor people join the union. Again, there's a lot of things here where it's like today, talented people don't join unions like his father would because there's general disdains of labor. But I'm just going to go through this section and just go with, you know, there's just a general disdain, you know, when I watch Robert Kiyosaki stuff for manual labor and hard work. That I don't really feel from Dave Ramsey, where it's like very blue collar, you know, very blue collar work. But a lot of people make their money through blue collar trades and through blue collar work, not through financial bullshit. Where it's like shuffling dollars around. Ooh, hocus pocus. Or as I like to call it, making your money by asking the Magic 8 Ball, hey, Magic 8 Ball, am I going to become a billionaire? Outlook not so good. But I just feel like that's what we, you know, just with like financial black box of these systems. If you follow my system, you'll become wealthy. But gee, if you're an engineer, you're going to probably be able to become a millionaire, just like you're a doctor or a successful lawyer. These are things that people know. But oh man, we need the financial system. Let's skip here a little ahead a bit. I just want to go. Oh, we got the whiteboard. He's got a whiteboard.
Generate income. And many entrepreneurs use this formula to make money on a day-to-day basis.
So what most people do is they have student loan debt, SL, and that debt is going out this way. You know, it doesn't put any money in your pocket. You can say, well, I have a job. Well, that's still you working for it. So I don't work for any of this money here. I do this job once,
We got the whiteboard. We're gonna get some passive income. It's the whiteboard. I'm out of coffee. It's quite sad. I'm gonna be looking at that very sadly, but the whiteboard has come out. I have a whiteboard too. Maybe I should go write on it. But the thing is, like, when you're making a decision to, you know, take out a student loan, throughout the vast majority of history, education has not been debt financed. Education has either been through like a guild system where you're basically becoming an indentured apprentice, you know, to the master for like 7 to 10 years. And basically you were the slave of your master. So student loans are just simply a reversal of that system, or trades-based education as a whole. So really, because to become a craftsman, we could go a little bit more into this at some point, you were a slave, okay? Until you became a journeyman, he was a slave, okay? In medieval times. You know, so again, the idea of capital or cash flow here doesn't really enter in. So we get these loops of good debt, bad debt, and you've got to maneuver, you've got to only use leverage, you know, when starting a business. Well, if you've never started a business before and you've never run a business, the average millionaire fails 13 times before they're successful. So probably not the best way to finance your business or necessarily your side hustle, because you have to actually be able to obtain enough leverage for the leverage's risk and a risk portfolio to be balanced. But apparently we're still doing financial chicanery. Let's continue for a second.
Up. Every year I add more and more and more of it. I'm borrowing money from here. It's coming here and going this way. So the debt is putting money in my pocket, and bad debt is taking money from my pocket. So the problem is, if you're going to use debt, you've got to be much smarter than this person here. You've got to be very, very smart. That's why I took real estate classes when I was 25, and I've never stopped taking real estate classes. Because you buy a piece of real estate and you make a mistake, this turns into a liability. This, if I get the...
Okay, so let me translate here. If anything goes wrong, you're effed. You are absolutely effed. Okay, and here's the thing. If you've ever watched any of my early videos on this channel, I'll be charitable, they suck, okay? They're awful. Thank you very much to all my viewers who regularly tune in, but my video editing, like, if you've seen my videos with background music, OMG, they suck, okay? I know it. It is a work in progress. I am getting better at the editing. You know, live stream today, we got like a nice green screen for once. I think this is a much better setup for my streams than previously. So it's really improved. But generally speaking, the first time you do something in the real world, it's gonna suck, okay? It is going to blow the F up until you know what you're doing. So this has nothing to do with being smart. There is a certain level of skill involved with real estate transactions. Whether or not you can learn the street smarts of real estate by being in a class, that just strikes me as a little, facetious. So like, people who do well in real estate are usually realtors, real estate attorneys, people who know this shit and they've learned through other people's pain and experience what not to do. There is a lot that goes into valuing a transaction. Like, let me tell you what, when you invest money, you remember the burns of you lost your own money very, very vividly. And those experiences help you get better at what you're doing. They toughen your skin up. So this idea, you've got to be very, very, very smart. I'm just like, yeah, okay. No, you need to be very, very, very strategic. And you need to find a way to learn what you're doing that doesn't cost you all of your money and chops your arm off. So it's not that you really need to be smart. It's that you really need to be strategic in how you take risks, because the odds are the first time you take a risk, it's not going to work super well. Oh, I have more coffee. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Coffee Fairy. Coffee. I'm so excited. Okay, so now I can continue going because, like, this was so sad. This was so sad. I was so sad. I had no coffee. Yes. So with this idea in mind, what you're getting into is, strategic risk taking, or taking a risk without, having your life completely implode. I'm actually based near Hartford, Connecticut, which is the insurance capital of the world. Woo, insurance. So a lot of what goes into insurance is, what risk am I willing to live with? What risk am I not willing to live with? So you can, with leverage, you can do a lot, but you're looking at a lot of risk. Like your best bet is, okay, if you can afford 2 properties because you're a dual income household where you basically have 2 mortgage payments, you buy a second property and you rent that one out. You can still make the payments on it and you're just doing that normally. So you're not essentially using it as an income supplemental. That's pretty low risk. That's pretty low risk. So, if you own a business, you know exactly what your cash flow is. You're making an additional investment in that business, pretty low risk from a leverage perspective. And that's just one of the things we go into. But there's a lot of things where, like hiring people or managing people, people do indeed suck. I can tell you plenty of horror stories that I have heard from people who own businesses about just finding good people, retaining good people. It is a true blue nightmare. But let's just switch over to some of the financial doom and gloom. I'm just so happy I have a coffee now. Yes. So with this, so it's gonna get worse. What do we do? The survival plan. I agree with you, Mr. Snorty Dog. What is the survival plan going to be? Behold it.
The good news is this: if it gets worse, you still have time to prepare. That is money supply. It's M2. Just too much money in the system. But the question is, so what's going to happen?
Okay, so if you're over leveraged, that's the thing. If you're over leveraged, you're extra screwed. So let's just answer a question for ourselves. So let's just say I own a business. Okay, I'm going to say I own fairly basic business here. I own a grocery store. Even in the worst of economic times, people might cut back on their purchases, but they've still got to eat. Somebody's still got to eat. So people still need to eat. It's really changing very much. The price of food is going to go up, but lo and behold, people still got to barter. People still got to eat. If you own the water company, there's only a limited amount of downside there. Utilities, real basic essentials. So not everything's going to go complete, belly up, even at the worst of times. So now what happens though is if you're over leveraged in a place where people have taken on a lot of leverage, we pretty much have a chain reaction to the 2007 financial crisis. So it's better to wait for everything to kind of implode, and then when you have cash, you could buy it. At least this would be the Dave Ramsey thinking. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a massive financial readjustment as the Fed seeks to lower prices. The writing that we're going into a recession has been on the wall for 6 or 7 months now. That is just pretty basic. Most of the world is already in recession. It's pretty easy to argue that China has been in recession for, at least since the end of last year, based on, the lockdowns and lack of sustainable growth. So, we're heading into now probably the real recession. Is it going to be worse than COVID? Is it going to be worse than all of the other terrible things my generation has lived through? No, not really. But I do love it when we're called a bunch of flowery buttercups, where I'm just okay, Great Recession, COVID, 2 years of lockdowns. It's another one. 9/11. All of these things that have happened, all these wonderful, wonderful things. Really like end of the 70s to like 2000s. That was a good generation to be a part of where there was a consistent upward trajectory of growth. But even with that in mind, this big collapse, it's like how to attract and use other people's money. It's just like, it just feels like, you're a grifter. If you need to if you won't risk your own money, I have a lot of problems with that. You should put your money where your mouth is. And if you're not willing to inject your own money, it's probably not such a great idea what you're about to embark on.
Let's say they raise interest rates, they push us into a recession. That's going to crush a lot of small businesses.
All those other wonderful things too.
I think the problem is in the
Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's
that's my concern. And the repo market, which is short term, as short as.
Okay. Is this just him like?
So what does that tell you? For money to exist, taxes had to exist. Hear me out. For money to exist, the dollar or the pound, taxes had to exist. So it was one of the biggest scams going. And that's why 1913 is.
It's one of the biggest scams going, man. You need some crypto. Don't be a sucker. So this ends up being the evangelism of, hey, don't be a sucker. You're a sucker. You're going to do something dumb. So, we could pretty quickly, biggest scam. Okay, we are off. Yeah, the banks are in probably serious trouble because of debt. Guess what happens when banks have lots and lots of debt? They tend to go bellies up. It is a foreseeable consequence or part of owning a bank. Banks are very good at going belly up. So let's continue.
Because all the Fed and the Bank of England has to do is print more money. And as long as people will accept this toilet paper like this, people are happy. But the moment one day somebody says, oh my God, $10 billion, but it's not worth it. I was in Zimbabwe. This wouldn't buy me an egg. What's screwing us all up are academics. The academic elite, the liberal left and all this, I don't know where their heads are at, but they're not up in the air. And so the Fed fits into that category, the Bank of England fits in.
Interesting. I think we were going to go. It's the liberal elites. It's the elites. They're keeping you down. Now you need to buy some crypto. Get yourself a seminar, sir. Woo! Thank you for this coffee. Coffee committee. Thank you so much. I needed that. I just really needed that in my life. It really just made my day. So, this idea, though, that somehow it's the academics, it's the elite, it's all these, college-educated, cockamamie, stupid people. If you want to get an interesting take on this stuff, I highly recommend a book by George Soros called The Alchemy of Finance, where he examines the principle of reflexivity. So again, he was a student of Karl Popper, who is one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. So instead of listening to this bozo, or Ray Dalio, why don't you listen to someone who's actually a trained philosopher like George Soros, who actually has experience running financial experiments in real time and actually breaking the entire system. So Soros is an extremely controversial figure, but his thought is, he's brilliant. He is absolutely bloody brilliant. and you run into this, lack of profoundness, or really a lack of thinking, which permeates a lot of this financial discourse, where it's very soundbite heavy, it's very gimmicky. I'm going to make you rich fast, and there's not a very long-term game to be had. So one of the things that I disagree with Dave Ramsey about is, calling people stupid. Robert Kiyosaki does this as well, where you need to paint the enemy, and it's, oh golly jeebers, that's the big problem. It's the banks. Oh, there's those gems too. It's conspiracy theories. I mean, it is really, though, just going back to our Amsterdam library here, it really is the problem that we run into is these guys are just crackpots. I mean, they're really just crackpots. Once you start examining things, and it's even like, I was watching a clip online of like Jordan Peterson, where, there's some things that, could be a like philosophy, but it's the polemics, it's just the angry or the system. So, I mean, it just really depends on this worldview. And what I always find so curious about these Christian conservatives is they rail against the system, but the system is such as it is because God has ordained that system. So nothing is beyond the will of God in most Judeo-Christian belief systems. So the world is exactly as God intended it. So, these elites in power, or the people in power, they're there because allegedly God put them there. And, you railing against that is, just you proving yourself unworthy of the test, which is always really curious. But you get into this kind of like deranged crypto bro conspiracy. And I always feel like when I'm dealing with finance stuff, a cult is always around the corner. Just going back to, some of these ideas, because it's really just not a far jump with what a lot of these guys are promoting into that world of like cult, crypto, extreme spirituality, extreme religion, or really just into the extremes. I mean, Robert Kiyosaki is going to be a guy I'm going to be visiting into a little bit more, because I just feel the milieu of quackery just permeating off of him. It just is. I don't usually dance in the realm of quacks. I really try to avoid them. You end up having very unproductive conversations with these people. And it's like at the same time I can have like I'm interested in Marxist thought, but the world has moved beyond Marx if you read the work of Peter F. Drucker. The idea of socialist competition is extremely interesting for state enterprises. And, even the godfather of Austrian economics, or one of the key disciples who had conversations regularly with Hayek and really instituted the work of modern management, argues for socialist competition in some of his works on management, which I digress, though, without going into more of a theoretical spiel here. But again, there is really substantive thought, and there are actual thinkers, there are actual academics who do have very useful opinions. Drucker is someone I highly recommend. Nearly all of his work is incredibly wise and elucidating on some of the insights he offers. Compared to somebody like Dave Ramsey or Robert Kiyosaki, I'd really say that somebody like Peter Drucker is actually a wise man. So it's not really, it's like when I'm looking for thinkers, or I'm looking to engage with someone's, intellectual output, the question becomes, is this person wise? Is this a wise financial course of action? If it's a wise financial course of action, you just kind of go for it. Now, there are risks where you're just betting the farm. Okay, you're just betting the farm. I'm gonna say something a little semi-romantic here, where it's just like, I met a nice girl, brings me coffee, bet the farm on her. Moments like this really pays off. Thank you for this coffee if you're watching the stream, honey. So that really does pay off. There's really a lot of benefit to be had there, where taking large risks, sometimes that's just what you do. You just jump in and you take the risk, and that's just what you do. There's no like, ooh, cash flow chart, and you need to be at peace with the choices you make. So again, with Dave Ramsey, Dave Ramsey in particular, I'm hesitant to show Dave Ramsey clips now because I got copyright claimed. We'll probably get copyright claimed from our buddy Rich Dad Poor Dad too. I'm going to be disputing a lot of freaking copyright claims, I think, as we're doing more content on some of these kooks and quacks. So the Fed will seize all your money. Interesting. Okay, so the Fed is going to take all of my money. That's good to know. The Fed's going to take all of my money. Okay, cool. So,
economics teacher said, who kills more people? It was socialist or capitalist. And the answer is socialist. The Nazi party was a national socialist, whatever we call it.
some coffee. Okay, so Hitler's party was crazy. It was just crazy, and if you're picking between Stalin or Hitler, you pick Stalin. Okay, you just pick Stalin. Easy answers here. The Gulag Archipelago is actually a noted fabrication. Once you start diving into it, Jordan Peterson portrays that as true. It is a fabrication that's been debunked. There's been a lot of interesting work done on like the Holodomor, which was the famine. There's a Yale historian, I'm forgetting her name right this second. Again, I've spent a lot of time reading within the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and the rise of National Socialism is a very unique historical phenomenon. Really, the anti-Semitism of Germany is, most of Europe has at times had varying levels of anti-Semitism. German anti-Semitism has always been extremely strong. Austria, not so much. Well, actually, Austria too, because Jews weren't even allowed to legally be citizens of the Kingdom of Austria. There were a number of restrictions on it, but you get like, okay, so it's the socialists versus the capitalists. It's
they killed 18 million people, 6 million were Jews. War, agrarian society. So King comes in and he says to be rich is glorious. He was the first capitalist.
Am I ever going to be able to get away from China in one of these videos? Just seems like, ooh, here's China again. Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I'm just like, dude, like, I'm just like, should I just do like a China video, like why China's not going to collapse economically, and just go back into it? I'm like, no matter how much I try to exit from that little sphere of the world, it's kind of like, ooh, it's the boogeyman. But it's like, I just can't win. It's like, I can't escape this. I cannot escape from my buddies in China YouTube land. So just kills me. It just kills me. I can't, keep trying to get out and they keep dragging me back in because now I got Robert Kyosaki railing. Oh my God.
This guy, he was bringing in capitalism to China. And now you have Xi, who is emperor for life, totalitarian for life, and they're killing the people in Hong Kong who are capitalists. The odds are Taiwan is next. As I say, as a former US Marine, I fought for capitalism. Unfortunately,
who the hell wants to die for an economic system? Okay, I mean, it's like, I just can't even, like, who? Like, that's the thing, like, why would you die for communism? And I'm just kind of like, I thought he was like a midshipman. I thought he was like a boat dude. Okay, Robert. Okay. Okay, then he's like a ship guy. Okay, so he was a gun pilot in the Vietnam War, and he went to fight in Vietnam. Okay, I'm like, dude, Vietnam's fine, okay? Like, it was like a totally pointless war. When I think of pointless wars, it's just like, I'm just like, dude, you fought in the Vietnam War. Okay, that was like one of the most aggressive wars of American imperialism ever. Okay. Nunca was America Latina. I mean, dude, it's not because of capitalism. Okay, it's like, I mean, America is a weird country, but the war in Indochina started out as a colonial war. Like, but again, we were so concerned with the big bad Soviet Union, we did spend a lot of time trying to destabilize them. Pretty much like everything we did, because communism bad, socialism bad. I could disagree with the ideas, but this idea that somehow capitalism itself is a net good, even if you read the Mac Daddy of capitalism, like the high profit of capitalism that many would consider Peter F. Drucker, I've enjoyed the debates I've gotten into with my own father, who's a management professor over this, where I was like, Dad, look at this with socialist competition. There are just certain economic sectors, like a hospital is not necessarily the best institution to run for profit, and neither are railroads. Just like, should utilities really be run for profit? That is a very widely debated question. The idea that you should somehow manage these institutions for performance makes a lot of sense. That's still how that still state industry should perform. It is a really good point, but yeah, I mean, it's just like, within NAM itself, so again, these like this narrative of capitalism versus capitalism versus socialism are very naive. I mean, it was a power politic move. There's a lot more generally at play. There's a lot of things that go into this.
America is going socialist, Marxist, and eventually totalitarian. So my money is out of this country. It's been out of this country for years. And I'm getting to run.
Let's see my phone go. Okay. Getting to run. Like, the people are running out of it because America is turning. Okay, so So let's play the scary socialist for a second, okay? I always get a cheap thrill out of this. Where is this? No. Yeah, in French. There we go. Yeah, I mean, it's like the
L'État comprime et la loi triche.
I know. I mean, it's like the funny thing is, like, I'm trying to find the right verse here.
Esprit du
One of the joys of producing commentary content is your friend the copyright claim system. Oh, I just get that. That version is because it's a song performance, so it's likely still under copyright. So il n'est pas deseo suprême ni de une zorni tribune productor sans nom decret eton la salut commune. I mean, it's just like the idea that this is the big bad scary sometimes when you actually look at the words, it's not as scary as it seems. Again, I've spent a lot of time reading Marx, reading Engels, and even with like something like Islam, where when you actually read the reality of what these things are, it is far less scary. Like, if somebody tells me to not read something, I'm pretty much immediately going to go read it. But there's a lot of suspension of disbelief. I mean, there are a number of problems in China right now. But with this, it's it's just like, this is just like a constant scam. Make money with no money. Okay, the only way you make money with no money is through hard work and overtime. And just brutal amounts of work. This just comes dangerously close to free lunchism. Yeah, I mean, like, that's one thing at least mounted a little bit better with the revolution, but it really does end up becoming a question of what are you going to what are you getting involved with here? What's going on with a lot of these things? And it just feels like a lot of, Robert Kiyosaki's stuff is just very much designed to, it's just like, it's this endless grift. It's this endless scam. So if the champion of capitalism is an immoral scammer who's talking about how he's going to flee the country because he's gotten caught in his scams, that doesn't necessarily seem to be a very good argument for a capitalist system. And he's also gone and killed people in a developing country in the name of capitalism. Oh. But apparently, it was those pesky Vietnamese people. They were just essentially asking to be saved by say by capitalism. But I do, I try to present a balanced and skeptical viewpoint on this channel. Like, if somebody tells me like China's the world's greatest place, I'm like, no, hold on there, homie. If you tell me it's the world's worst place, it's kind of like people who tell me America is the world's greatest country on earth. Objectively speaking, America has got a lot of issues. If you've spent any time in America, it's like, been to California, you've seen the homeless crisis, you see what our cities are like, our lack of infrastructure, and all these other things. Yeah. So there's definitely issues there. I think there are parts of America that work pretty well. Like, most of New England is, okay, we're functioning. It's not like the world's worst place to live up here. I mean, it's a very expensive property tax wise. But I feel it's a reasonable cost to pay for what is honestly a pretty good quality of life. Versus like Texas, where it's like, if you've been to Houston, oh my, it's like hell. Has no zoning. There's can't walk anywhere. It just makes no sense. It's like literally a bunch of buildings got pulled. It's like thrown out of darts. It is truly what I would call an urban hellscape. And that term seems a little extravagant sometimes, but you run into this environment, or you run into this world where it just feels like everything results in this grift. And then because they need to grift, it becomes like capitalism versus socialism, and people just toss around the word totalitarian like it doesn't even make sense. I do want to visit the issue in America, and the issue in America right now is not the Democratic Party. It really is not. The party that is the bigger problem right now, again, is probably the GOP. So the reason I'm saying this is because Kiyosaki's video is presenting us this idea of socialism, but it's usually Bonapartism, which is, effective takeover by one person. So the greatest danger in any, in organization is really this idea of Bonapartism, where an effective organization, shouldn't have a cult of a CEO. It shouldn't be reliant on one person. So for an organization to truly be effective, it should have leadership, and it should get talented people in who are not just the leader. Let's just look at the meta issue right now with Facebook going on, where Mark Zuckerberg's been in charge for 20 years, which is really that's the max of an effective rulership period, is 20 years. Very seldom are people effective for 50 years, 30 years. So he's effectively, as the leader of the company, he's run his course. So there needs to be a change in leadership, because this idea of the metaverse is really stupid. It's nobody wants that. If you talk to a group of people, they wanted the ability to interact with their friends and like each other on a Faces page and see each other with social interaction. That idea makes sense. So, these are not, but it's the network effect you get of people using your product in unintended ways. So people never use things in the way you foresee. Generally, so that's just kind of something that Drucker does point out, again, on entrepreneurship, where it's the serendipity of the product. So I work in market research, and, the uses that people see for the product in the real world, or the way they're going to use it, are not necessarily ones we can predict. your greatest uptake in users may not come from the group you are expecting. What I have been taught, however, is apparently in terms of like the Skepsis and Nomadic Insights, it's some of the financial chicanery, I'm in the channel sweet spot as we're doing more kind of live content or the longer form stuff, a little bit of credit card reviews because I just like my financial products. It's just easier to, do the video content versus the live stream, which is kind of the crux of this channel. Thank you again to all the longtime viewers. We really appreciate you guys. But with this, oh my God, I need to just pull this up for a second here. Oh my. Really looks like he's gonna poop in this thumbnail. It's really just an unfortunate thumbnail. Right? Okay, so let's see if he's gotten crazier.
Arizona, price is $5,000. So, thank you for listening, and I'll share some of the insights I've learned over the years on raising capital. Again,
It just sounds so much more put together. Like if you watch Dave Ramsey from like 20 years ago, these guys are much more cogent. They sound a lot less unhinged. They sound far less off their rocker, for just lack of a better term here. And I'm really just hoping that I don't become a quacky old guy. Really don't want to. Just really don't want to. And I'm scared. I'm scared of the future. So scared of this. Because these guys really, become more quacky, it seems. But again, the idea of the elite is ruining everything, or the elite are destroying the world. Could be a number of things. I just think it's being caught in the media bubble and needing to attract attention for so long, where you just kind of inevitably run out of things to say, or the message is so vapid, it's just not really effective. Like, if you watch, like, let's say like a Catholic priest, I don't ever feel like, like even like monks who are like old monks where they're still kind of intellectually engaged, because there's a lot of things to still talk about with like a sustaining deep message. But if you're like, if your whole shtick is just like the accumulation, well, hopefully I'm not crazy. Hopefully I'm not crazy right now. I'd like to avoid being crazy, but maybe I am crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy because I don't have my own crazy spaceman environment set up with my whiteboard. I love George Carlin. Honestly, mine is like Peter Drucker, Tolkien, J.K. Chesterton, C.K. Lewis, like really guys who just produced a lot of intellectual output and were extremely cogent writers, and they just kind of went across and did other things. Like, I'd say, the biggest thing with like David Ramsey's stuff is outside of, kind of this financial world, there's not really a lot else to him. There's not really a lot of additional, depth. And I do think that part of, kind of staying sane is, having some degree of like a balanced life. And it's like when you get a good, when you get somebody who's actually kind of living a balanced life, so again, just kind of like this idea of that, as we're kind of meandering here towards what I would kind of almost capture as the end of today's stream, it's really about living a balanced life and not going towards like an extreme. It's like everything in moderation. If you drink every night, you're getting blackout drunk. You just have a disordered life, and you're setting yourself up for a great deal of problems. I don't see that as being particularly controversial. But these guys don't really want moderation. They don't really want they want you on edge, they want you ready to click, and they want you ready to buy the next product. And it's just always like, let's be ready to go, let's gin up some controversy. I had a guy comment on one of my videos where he's like, you gotta take a position, and you gotta really own that position. I'm just like, you don't really have extreme positions. I have opinions, don't get me wrong, and I mean, when I think I'm right, I will go to the mats, and I'm really unreasonable. But there's not a lot of opinion. It's more of like, this is what I read after considering the issue, and I think it's a balanced approach. But the idea of, like Fox News claiming to be fair and balanced, you need to actually consider both sources. You need to consider each counterpoint. And, there's that's not really done in short content. With books where, I'm debating, should I do short form video to grow the channel? No, it's not really going to be particularly useful, and I don't think it's going to add a lot of value. But again, I'd say that this idea that somehow debt is anti-ethical to wealth, or you can't use leverage or debt, to accumulate wealth, I think that that's silly. I think it is something, though, when you're using debt, that there's an incredible learning curve. And like many things, you do kind of need an apprenticeship, or you're going to end up falling victim to one of these, like, one of these grifters. Personally, I avoid real estate for a couple reasons, because to make money, it seems like you got to engage in a little quid pro quos from your local politicians, and things get political pretty fast. So it's just easier to just have an index fund. There are far fewer issues with that, by the entire market. Again, this idea of raising capital, or the two segments of the market, the lifestyle segments of, people who struggle with money gravitate towards Dave Ramsey. People who have, addiction, alcoholism, or underlying mental health disorders that cause them to accumulate a disproportionate amount of debt naturally gravitate towards his material. And people who think they're just too clever probably are led towards like Robert Kyosaki stuff. Like, I find the message of Rich Dad Poor Dad in the book, fairly straightforward, where it's like actually, trying to be a bit smarter, work smarter, not harder. That's a sentiment. That's a sentiment I'm capable of getting behind, but it does still seem like a lot of the messaging is just designed to get you into the grift funnel, which is where I kind of draw the line. But that's just me personally. So guys, thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of Nomadic Insights. I know we've kind of been hopping around a little bit as the conversations evolve a little bit from chat. I do think we've done a pretty adequate job, exploring the issue of debt. And hopefully you've got some value out of today's episode. If you could leave a comment on the stream, it does really help with reviews, and we'd really appreciate it. But thanks so much for coming to this episode of Skeptic Sunday, and we'll see you next weekend. Probably going to actually be doing more stuff with our buddy Robert Kyosaki here, because apparently the crazy train goes deep. It does. And we'll go from there. So thanks so much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Okay? And to steal something from our good friends in the China YouTube world, Hope you stay awesome, guys.